Babe, when you look at this offense and what had been taking place over the last several weeks, and then looking what Dak Prescott did on Sunday against Washington, did you notice anything mechanically or anything different relative to what we saw in the weeks prior to that Washington game that you noticed was different about his performance and what made him successful?
It's funny, Kevin, because I've been asked that a lot by different people, and what'd you see? And I'd love to say I'm the guy. I'd love to say I'm the guru who could tell you what's wrong or why this ball. I can point out certain passes that misfired, and I can say this is what happened, as any quarterback could, and say, well, he was spread out, his feet didn't get pointed, whatever. But I always say, they got Kellen Moore over there. They got Doug Nussmeier, who's the quarterback coach. They got Mike McCarthy, who coached quarterbacks. They got a lot of guys over there looking at Dak. So for me to watch him, from our booth and say, hey, here's what's happening would be, little self-aggrandizing. But since you asked the question, the one thing I saw, or a couple things I saw, and now Dak may say, oh, that's crazy. That's not even close. And I would say, okay, and I was totally wrong. But it looked like he really was turning it loose in this last game. And by that, I mean the ball. He was throwing it hard. And obviously there's a time for touch passes and all that, but the ball was jumping out of his hand, and it just looked like he was ripping it. And I remember John Kitna, when he got here, one of the things he talked to Dak a lot about, and Dak embraced, was basically kind of throwing the ball as hard as you can. And again, it's not every pass. There are certain passes where you're going to throw a touch, you're going to take a little something off it. But I just thought he was ripping the ball. The other thing, his feet, to me, were very quiet. And I'll go back to a guy who obviously was a much better player than me, Steve Young. And I remember Steve Young saying, you can tape my lower body. You can tape from the waist down. I don't even have to see the throw, and I can tell you how I played. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, of course, until you start watching Aaron Rodgers, and you would say, hey, the guy he must have never completed a pass in that game. And it's like, no. Actually, he was 25 or 30, had 5 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Right.
So there are some times where you would look at guys' feet and say, okay, wait a minute, that's not good. But I think with Dak, he really seemed to be a little more quiet in his feet and didn't seem as hurried to me in his reads. It seemed like he worked through the progression. I thought a couple games he just really got off of things really quickly and didn't let them develop, if that makes any sense.
What have you been seeing from Arizona, Babe, during this losing streak compared to the number 1 seed they were earlier in the year?
Well, I think, they started off, as we well know, on fire. They were 7-0, the only undefeated team at that point through 7 games. DeAndre Hopkins has missed, I believe, 5 games now, and that certainly hurts. Kyler missed some games in there. Now, I will say he missed 3 games, and they went 2-1 during that streak. But it's just, the NFL season, especially, again, with COVID, they've lost, I believe, 19 starters have missed games for them with COVID. So when you talk about continuity, and we hear it all the time, right? McCarthy talks about the O-line and the continuity and the history of playing together. 19 starters have missed games, and I think they've missed a total of 66 games on COVID. So,
wow.
We don't really look at it because we don't see Arizona on a day-to-day basis, but that's difficult going through. So I think they're a really good football team. I really do. They do a lot of things well. They're good on the front end. They're good on the back end. Budda Baker is a real playmaker. Mike McCarthy called him the X factor. And offensively, again, Hopkins being out hurts them. But people forget too, they're really a running team. You think of Cliff Kingsbury and Texas Tech and the air raid offense, and they like to run the football. And obviously James Conner is having a heck of a year for them. So they're a little more diversified than people think.
Babe Laufenberg, Cowboys color analyst here on 105.3 The Fan. What do you think of Kyler? What did you think of him coming out? Compare him. You've seen a lot of local football in your time here. Still do work with high school players. Kyler coming out, and is he the best that you've ever seen in this state?
That's a good question, because I saw Matthew Stafford. I went and saw a game. I just wanted to say, hey, what's this guy about? There's a couple of high school kids here that, I didn't know Matthew Stafford at the time. where I say, I'm going to go see this guy.
Right.
The one guy I didn't see is Quinn Ewers, which I wish I had. In person, because you get a whole different feel watching a guy in person. But certainly I saw Kyler. Matter of fact, do you remember the name Sosa Jamambo?
I do not.
He was a running back. He was a running back at Plano West.
Okay.
I think he was considered the best running back in the country. He went to UCLA. Career never quite took off the way the best running back in the country's career would.
Right.
But he played against Kyler. Allen played against Plano West, and I went up and watched that game. And Kyler Murray was one of those guys. You knew this kid was good. You knew all the stuff. You knew that he was undefeated as a high school quarterback. And you go and you watch, and you're going, good Lord. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. And I did. Now, I will tell you, I played against John Elway in high school.
Whoa.
I went to Crespi High School in Los Angeles. Elway went to Granada Hills High. And, I was a decent high school quarterback. And he ripped the ball. I don't know. You could have put an NFL player next to him. That's what I said about Stafford. When I saw Stafford, the way he threw the ball, I said, you could put this guy. Now, he wasn't going to be ready to handle everything that an NFL quarterback needed to handle. But if you just put him out there and everybody had red jerseys on and they didn't have numbers and you didn't tell me this one kid over here is a high school kid, he could have gotten in line and thrown with an NFL team in camp, and he would have been fine. And there aren't many guys like that. And obviously, a guy went on to become the number one pick in the draft, and we know what Stafford is now. But sometimes you see these high school kids and they don't pan out for whatever reason in college. But Stafford obviously kept ascending, but he was dang good. Here's a couple I'll give you though, guys, like Adrian Peterson, right? I never saw him play in high school. I can only imagine a high school kid trying to tackle Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, not
the guy
fun.
could have won the Heisman as a freshman at Oklahoma. Earl Campbell, way back when, coming out of Tyler. I can only imagine, a 150-pound high school kid trying to tackle Earl Campbell, because Earl, he was a man in high school. One thing I say about those guys too, very quickly, you go to a game. Anybody goes to a game. My mom could have gone to a game. My mom was born in Italy. She'd go to a game and say, wow, that you watch Kyler Murray, for instance, and you go to that game and you say, wow, that one kid is a lot better than those other kids. And the amazing thing, though, for these really, really great athletes, the Deion Sanders and Kyler Murrays, you're going to go to the Cowboys game. I could have brought my mom, rest her soul, to the Cowboys game this Sunday, and she would have said, wow, that number one, he's a lot better than those other kids. And I said, well, Mom, they're grown men, they're NFL players, and they're all great athletes, but he's still better than the rest of them.